ready for takeoff.
Hello, thank you for coming. My name is Carolyn Cole, and I work at the Princeton University Library. And this talk is how I love Mermaid.js. What is Mermaid.js? It's diagrams as code. How awesome is that? You can create a diagram and keep it in your README. You can create a diagram and keep it with your code. And when diagrams are code, they are much easier to maintain. You can see here that GitHub will show your diagrams. All you need to do is add the tick, tick, tick mermaid, and then you can put your diagram right in your README. Awesome. Geeked out about that a little bit. And the documentation on Mermaid is pretty awesome. And they have extensive documentation. And it was made in 2015, so it's been around for quite some time by Knut. So why would you want to utilize a diagram? I mean, this may seem obvious, but I like to utilize them for verifying understanding. People say a picture's worth 1,000 words. As long as folks can see it, it is. That's one thing to think about is accessibility. Make sure you title your diagrams. You can document your systems for yourself or for future developers. And I really love documentation of diagrams because when you're going through requirements, it helps to suss out those implicit things that are not explicit in the requirements. So I have some examples here of diagrams that I've created for systems that I have. And this is a state diagram, and you can see that it's embedded in my GitHub. And you can see this lovely wall of text that talks about the states of the system. But nicely, when you get down to the state diagram, you can really see how the different states flow into each other, and it makes a big difference on how you know how things are connected. This is a sequence diagram. It's actually relatively readable, but not entirely, and don't feel like you need to read it. The important thing is, if you could read it, this bar over here is ALMA, and it is the trigger to every interaction in this system. Our system is this middle bar. If you'll notice, ALMA does not directly touch it, and so you would never know that this is the actual trigger to everything without this diagram if you were just reading the code. And the last example I'll show is a flow diagram. And this is just a flow chart. It's really hard to read again, but you can see from the one input form, we contact 8 different backends. And a cool thing is that Mermaid will put your put out the diagram. And so you can change things like, I just changed that from a right-left to a top-down. And Mermaid did all of that laying out for me. I don't have to worry about it. And if I wanted to, I could put this in as a PR and have my colleagues review it so that we could all decide, do we really want it top down or do we want it left right? So here's some system requirements, and the rest of this time is really going to be a demo of me creating a Mermaid diagram. You don't need to know these requirements and just have them for something to work against. But given a set of requirements, any requirements, I tend to ask some similar questions, like what types of users are in the system, what states can different objects go through, what external systems does my system work with? And so diagrams are really great ways of bringing this to the forefront. So we're going to build a sequence diagram. You're going to see me typo a lot. It's part of the fun. I'm starting with a sequence diagram because it gets you a high-level overview, but you could use any of the diagrams that we discussed. Again, the documentation in Mermaid is awesome, But because it's extensive, it's a little hard to utilize for this talk, so I've created a cheat sheet, and so I'll utilize that. Now, my initial thought was that I was going to do this all in GitHub and that you would see it there. But unfortunately, due to network constraints, the preview doesn't always show up very well in GitHub. So we're going to do it here in my editor. But the other nice thing is that a lot of editors have Markdown. And so you can see right here, I can see my diagram as I'm creating it. All right, so we're going to start with the first requirement. A user created a new object, and I need to mint an ID in the system. So I'm going to change this diagram, and I'm going to say the user. Oops. As I said, you'll see me typo. That's the great thing about this is that your coworkers can help you find your typos. Okay, so I'm going to create a new object. And so now you can see that automatically Mermaid has changed these over to user and our system, and they've changed this tag to new object. Now that's pretty cool, but our user is usually a person. Let's see here. I'm just going to make this system. For accessibility, I like to add a title to every image. So one thing that you can do is, and this is my cheat sheet, is you can make these little people or person for different users. So I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to put that in there. And the nice thing is you can show who's a human and who's a system on your diagram. So if we look at our diagram now, you can see that I have a humanoid user, and it's going to interact with our system. Now, the other nice thing that you can do is you can set up participants, and this can be shortcut names. So if you notice here, our system's a little long to type, so I can change this to RSys, and that is going to be our system. That way I'm much less likely to typo that, although it will happen. Oh, system error because I did add participant. That was not what I wanted. So you can see when I typo something, it'll tell me that I have made a mistake by giving me a syntax error. Some of them are good, some of them are but usually I can figure out what I've done. So, all right, a user created a new object, and I need to mint an ID in System X. All right, well, so I need to talk to System X. So assuming we'll create a participant for System X as sysx. Oops. Mint. As I said, I like to typo. And here I've done something slightly wrong as well. I've gotten 2 RSys. So you'll notice that Mermaid will actually lay out everything you tell it to do. It's code. It's nice. Sometimes it doesn't do what you want it to do because it only knows what to do. So I'm going to do another participant here as well, so that I can label that nicely. But you notice I didn't need to create a participant to have the sysx show up. System X. All right, so now we've got our user, we've got our system, we've got System X. We're going to mint an ID, and then we're going to tell our user that we have created the object. And this is simplified, of course. Whoops. Okay, so we've created an object. All right, now wait a second. System X minted an ID. I've kind of written this diagram wrong, right? Because we're going to do something with that ID. If I was laying this out myself, I would have to go back and move blocks around, but yay, Mermaid. I can just go in and add a line. And so I'm going to do system X is going to return to our system. And then our system is going to save that ID. And so now if I've done it right, which I did, you can see now I've got this nice diagram that's bumped the created object down. The ID is saved to our system, and System X has returned the ID. Yay, okay, it's not a big deal to maintain and update diagrams. Diagrams is code. Hoorah! Okay, so we're gonna go in and do some more requirements just to give you an idea of additional things that Mermaid can do. So a user updates the metadata on the object, and we will update System X if this is something that System X cares about. So user is going to tell our system, all right, and our system is going to do something with System X, right? But it's not all the time. So if I was here, I would be all the time sending an update. So what we really want is something else. And so Mermaid has this nice thing called an alternate. And the alternate gives you the idea that you can do a choice. So I'm going to do an alternate. Oh, and I should say that these like RSys, and these could be anything you want. You could use individual letters, but again, that makes things hard to read. And if your diagram is code and you want it to be readable, you'll use better descriptive information. So our choice is System X is interested, and then the spacing is also not needed, but I like it because that makes my code more readable for me. And since this is a diagram as code, I'd like to make it readable. So here we go. We've got our alternative. If System X is interested, we're going to update the metadata. So now the system notifies the curator when an object is ready to review. Wait a second, that implies state. Whoops, that there's different states to the object. That implies that there's this other person, a curator. Huh. Well, let's add it to our document and our diagram, and let's see how we like it. So let's add in a new person. I'm going to add a curator. And so we can see here that I've got my curator now. Although I don't entirely love this because I've got my user, and my curator's kind of in between the user and the system. And I don't think that entirely reflects how I like to see this. So I'm going to move my actor down to the end. And that's something interesting that you can do, which is move around your boxes based on how they show up in the system. So now I've got my curator. And then I am going to have the user tell our system it's ready for review. And at this point, I don't know if I'm going to have direct access to my curator, or if I'm not. For the simplicity of this class, I'm going to just say we have direct access, but this is a diagram as code. So later, if I need to introduce Slack or email, I can just shove it right in there. So our system is just going to talk to the curator directly. So now I've got, whoops, I've got something entirely wrong. Our system got moved out to in front of curator because I typoed it. Let's see, not an R. Haha, there we go. So and I did it again on another line. All right, so now we've got the picture I was expecting. So our curator is told that this object is ready for review. All right, and now the last requirement is the curator needs to approve the object for it to show up publicly in the system. Wait a second. Are they going to approve every object? Probably not. There's probably going to be some sort of feedback mechanism, some sort of loop that's implied here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go back into my cheat sheet and we're going to use this loop, which allows you to show a loop in your diagram. All right, that's just jumping around, having fun. We'll just ignore it for the moment. All right, so I think that the loop is going to end up being around here. And I'm going to say loop until the object is approved. All right. So this is going to loop forever at the moment. So let's say that I'm going to put another alternate here because the object may not be ready to approve. And you can do an else in your alternate, so I can say that this is not ready, and so if it's ready to approve, we're gonna mark it as public, so we're gonna say the curate is gonna tell our system and then otherwise the curate will tell our system what's wrong. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at what we've got there. So we've got it, is it ready to approve? We're gonna, curate will tell the system whether it's ready, or they'll tell us what's wrong. And then we can add into here that we're gonna mark the object as public. So and we're going to tell the user that that we've approved their object. And again, we probably don't have direct access to the user, but we can add that Slack or email in later. Or we can tell the object or the user that we want them to was not approved and tell them to please fix it. Okay, so now we've got this really complex diagram. It goes through our requirements, but it's starting to get a little bit busy because even diagrams can get busy. And so another awesome thing that Mermaid does is they allow for theming. So I'm going to put some rectangles because I would say there's actually two different groups of things here. There's the object creation, and then there's the object approval and update. So I'm going to go ahead and add some rectangles. And I can never remember the RGB color scheme. I think one of these is highlighter yellow. And again, the spacing is not needed. I just like it for readability. So now I've got this highlighter yellow. And these numbers are RBG, so you can do any color you want to in this rectangle. And so I'm going to put another rectangle in around our other group. All right, so now I've got my 2 sections highlighted. That's a little easier to read, but it'd be nice to have a label. Mermaid allows you to do that as well. So I'm going to have a note. Let me look at my cheat sheet real quick to make sure I get this correct. And this is why I created this cheat sheet, because it's, because it's hard to remember how to do these things. So I'm going to create the note, and you can tell it where to place it. So you can say the left of something, right of something, over something. And so I am going to put mine on the far left, I'm going to put it to the left of the user. And this is the approval flow. And we're going to put one more note in the top one as well. All right, so now that's a little bit more readable. I can see that this is the creation flow, and I can see that this is the approval flow. Additionally, Mermaid allows you to do some overall theming. So if I come here and I come down here, you can see that instead of here, this is the dark theme. You can see that my person is all black, and it's black on white. I personally like the forest theme. I'm a big backpacker, and so I don't know why they added the 3 themes they did, forest, neutral, and dark, but I like to be out in the forest. So I'm going to add this incantation up to the top here. And this is saying my theme. I'm going to change this to forest. And then you can see over here that now my people are happy and in the forest. The other thing that I did is I turned off the mirroring of the actors. Now that's kind of nice on a small chart, but in this really large chart where we're doing a lot of scrolling, I think I'd much rather have the actors on the mirroring. I apologize. I keep getting blocked. So I'm going to go ahead in here and set that back to true. So now I've got this diagram, and I've got my actors mirrored. All right, well, so that is actually the entirety of my my talk. Let's see here. So thank you for coming, and I hope you all love Mermaid.js and are excited to use it, just like me. The QR code is the link to the slides, so if anybody would like to get those. And we have time for questions. Does anybody have any questions? So the question was, is Mermaid enabled by default in GitHub? And the answer is yes, absolutely. You just need to do the tick, tick, tick and Mermaid, just like you can sometimes you do different scripting, and then GitHub will see that that is a Mermaid diagram and go for it. So the question is, how easy is it to extend the Mermaid system? And I don't know about like creating a new actor, but in the cheat sheet, apologies. You can add images into your diagram. So like here I've added in the loop, come on, be good, no, all right. There we go. So here I've added in the spoon and mouth because those are little icons. And so you can add in icons. So my assumption is you'd be able to add in different icons fairly easily. If I can get back to the code. Come on, bar, go away. There we go. And so this is the hex code for the spoon. And this is the hex code for the mouth, and so I can show those. But I don't know whether you can add additional images. That's something I should know, though. Thanks for asking. Is the cheat sheet available? And the answer is yes, but it is my own personal. A nice thing about working for a library is everything that you do, or almost everything you do, is open source. And so I'm going to bring that QR code back up. And if you scan that, you'll be able to get to this slideshow. And then the cheat sheet is linked in the slideshow. And all of the examples are also open source. So if you saw something that looks something like what you're doing. I should say also that we use this a lot for swim lanes. We do all of our documentation for our, like what we've done in a week to give to our supervisors in Mermaid. So the question was, how did you land on Mermaid.js? And I'll have to say, I just fell in love with it when I used it. One of my colleagues at Princeton said, have you seen this neat new tool? And I said, no. And then I'm like, oh my God, I love this thing. And I was so excited to come out, and hopefully everybody else will go, oh my gosh, I love this thing too. But no, I did not try additional other things. Some of my colleagues have pointed me towards different things. And one of the things that I like about this is that it is shown on GitHub. I can do PRs and PR reviews. Like you can go back and forth between the code and the document, and you can suggest, like if I put a typo in there, which I am 100% sure I did, I can actually submit the PR. My colleagues can put a suggestion. I can accept their suggestion. So it's really integrated well with the tools that we already use. So I can't remember the other one that somebody showed me, but their README actually had an image in it. And I'm like, wait a second. It's not integrated with GitHub if they have to actually take a snapshot of it and put it up there. So that's part of the reason I love it so much. So you were playing with the editor and you could use icons in Mermaid? Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. That's helpful. So you can just use font awesome icons in Mermaid. Another reason to love it. Thank you so much.